Mike, we are live today.
We are live at Perspective Shift.
Yes.
How we doing, Frank?
I'm doing fabulous. How about yourself?
I'm great.
Yeah.
Good week.
Yeah. How was your week?
It was good. Busy.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on with work.
I just flew my mic across.
I saw that. Monsoon season is upon us here in Arizona, and that's been real nice. I've been enjoying the weather lately, the heat.
It's funny, the monsoon season. I remember when it first came out to Arizona. It's been 22 years now, but, everyone's like, hey, the monsoon season's coming. What's that? And the only thing I remember of the monsoon was watching Gilligan's Island, and it literally wiped out the island they were on. I'm like, what's going to happen? It's like the monsoon in Arizona or in Phoenix is a lot different than Gilligan's Island monsoon.
A lot different.
Yeah, a lot different. You get rain and wind, but there, I was like, holy shit, is the place going to fall apart? I built a raft in the backyard.
Oh, my God, that's so awesome. Yeah, no.
I think that's how they got off the island, by the way. I think it was like the last episode of Gilligan's Island.
Was it? They got off?
I think they did. Yeah, they got off. I think it was,
That's funny.
Because I haven't watched this since I was a kid, but I think it was like the monsoon forced them to build this big raft and they floated away. I could be completely wrong.
We'll have to fact check that later.
Yeah, we'll have to fact check that.
We'll have to check that on that.
The monsoon in Arizona.
So this week on Perspective Shift, we're covering Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, the skipper and Mary.
Yep. And
it's a 3-hour tour. It's a 3-hour tour.
I love it. No, actually, today we have a very, very special guest. Frank, who are we doing today?
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And, so Wayne Dyer is probably when you talk about this genre of all the people we covered, Wayne Dyer is kind of like the backbone of it. And what I mean is he had this knack of public speaking and talking about this stuff. So, like everyone from Neville Goddard to Ram Dass, I was turned on to him by listening to Wayne Dyer back in the 80s, and he would come on to PBS, and back then I wouldn't pay too much attention. He's just a guy that we'd watch, and he had a lot of good things to say, kind of like you would listen to a preacher on TV. And outside the religious aspects, I'm like, hey, he's got some good points there. But over the years, he would talk about different people, and every time he would talk about someone, I'm like, oh, let me look into that person. He talked about Alan Watts, looked into him, Bruce Lipton, Ram Dass, and Neville Goddard. He actually wrote a book where Neville Goddard was one of the proponents of it.
See, that's awesome. I wrote it down. It's called, where is it?
Something Wisdom.
Wishes Fulfilled.
Wishes Fulfilled.
Yep.
And then because actually it was around the same time when I heard him talk about this, someone told me about Neville Goddard prior to that. And I got his book but never read it. But then when I got Wayne Dyer's new book came out, Wishes Fulfilled, I started reading it, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm actually going to go into deep into Neville Goddard. So Wayne Dyer was these people that, if you want to call it New Age, we wouldn't necessarily call it that, but he was the platform that brought all those people up. So I believe for a lot of people, he allowed a Ram Dass become mainstream,
especially prior to the internet. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of that person to bring these, previous teachers or enlightened beings to life.
Yeah, because where
And
else?
give them a platform, like you're saying.
Yeah, because there was nowhere else unless someone told you about the book or something. Especially when it came to Alan Watts, I had to get his books. Now, Alan Watts has close to 400 hours of video or audio recording on out there.
Yep.
Yeah, you can find it, but you couldn't get your hands on it back in the day when Wayne Dyer. So it was his books I got hold on to, and then I was introduced to Ram Dass and all these other people. So Wayne Dyer was that guy, and I believed he did. He lived these methods, these systems, and what he talked about. So he practiced what he preached.
Absolutely. Yeah. The principles that we talk about on Perspective Shift, this is something Wayne Dyer was talking about 25, 30 years ago. Neville was talking about that, 100 years ago. So it's cool to see, these different, the relationship that, these teachers, had on Wayne Dyer, and the effect that they had on him for him to then go and write books on their content, elevating them now to a whole new group of people. And that, Wayne had the unique ability to do this through PBS, which was a big platform.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like that was the channel. People was Bob Ross on PBS?
Bob Ross was on. I forgot.
He was on something.
That guy was unique.
But I just know
painting little dancing flowers in the background.
People used to actually watch TV, and that's how we got information.
Oh yeah. Now we just watch it to distract ourselves. But back then, actually we still watch TV. But now, like the form of what TV is for me and Mike anyway. It's and a lot of people. I turn it directly to like a YouTube, so I go right to the information I want rather than waiting for someone to present it. Because you had to wait for Wayne Dyer to present it, and then I would wait for his books to come out and talk about this person, go read that book, or I happened upon a book. Where now it's like, it's at our fingertips, and there isn't enough hours in the day for me to absorb this, but it's nice. Mm-hmm. It's nice, and he started that out. He's the one who kind of branded this this platform, if you will, but made it mainstream.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's tell them a little bit about Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer, he died when he was 75, you said?
Yeah, 75 years
Back
old.
in
I think it was 2015. He was born in 1940.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was from Detroit. He was actually originally a high school teacher.
Nice.
Then from there he went to St. John's, went to New York and taught counseling psychology at St. John's. And then from there, he made his way down to Florida, and I think that's around the time in 1972, I believe. He tells a story. I heard him tell it several times. But when he learned the act of forgiveness is, going back to, and you know this too about Wayne Dyer. His father left him when they were young. 3 boys, I believe. Mm-hmm. He was one of 3.
And his mom was only 23.
Yeah, so. She had to take care of him, so there was times where she had to split the family up just for survival, and he had to go. I think him and one of his brother had to go into a orphanage. So he learned to survive an orphanage. And actually, I was listening to him this morning. I remember hearing the story, but me and Mike just recap over everything to make sure we do it justice when we talk about it. But he was talking about having the abundance mentality even when he was young. Like he believes he was born with it. Because even when he was in an orphanage, he always had money in his pocket, even if it was change. It didn't matter how much. And the point I love what he makes is, he goes, I never strived to make more. I just was appreciative of what I had in my pocket. And because of that, more always came. So then he went from teaching in high school. Then he went to St. John's University. And then there was a moment in his time where he was still living, like he said he was drinking too much, and we found out that his father had died, and I don't know how many years, probably within 5 or 10 years prior to him finding out. He found out where he was, and if I'm not mistaken, it was like somewhere in Mississippi. I could be wrong. So we found the location, the cemetery. He went there, and as his words, his intention was to go piss on the grave.
Yep.
Yeah, and something hit him, and he went to the grave, and he discovered forgiveness. And in that act, it changed his whole life in that moment. It was a pivotal point in his life. And shortly thereafter, he wrote Erroneous Zones. And I believe he said he did it in like 14 days. He went down to Florida and just wrote this thing. And it was I think it was on the bestseller, New York's bestseller for like 10 years. It was somewhere in that. And that turned his life around. And that's how he got into public speaking. And, and it was. Here's a guy that was, had nothing. He was in an orphanage, but he's, still look where he made it. Yeah. I often hear him talking about, because he started as a high school teacher, and in the right context. I hope I don't get this wrong, but when you talk about teachers always complaining that they're not making enough money, he says focus on what it is you're good at. And he goes, look at me. He's like, I was a high school teacher, but now on my platform's bigger. But teaching is teaching is the greatest thing that he's ever known. But when we actually talk about this is all I have, you get stuck there rather than appreciating the fact that you're teaching the future of this world. When you do that and focus on that, the money will come, new advancements and new ideas. And now instead of teaching in front of a bunch of, in a classroom with like 26 high school students, he's got millions of people at the time. Obviously he's dead at the moment, but even now teachings continue to go on. Here we are talking about them.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying about that, because that's the point. Like, being, grateful and appreciative of being able to teach, and knowing that more opportunities are out there and more to come. That's what allowed other doors to open for Wayne,
And gratitude. And he talks about gratitude and forgiveness, and those two type of emotions or concepts are huge, because you can do those right now. Mm-hmm. Like right now, you might not have $1 million, but right now you can be grateful for the money you do have, for people you do have. And when you forgive those who damned you, that takes away the energy that will hold you, the weight. That energy is heavy. So that keeps you from going to a higher level to see how more money can come, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So
that weight you're talking about, that's a real thing. I remember, learning these concepts and going through this myself, and learning to forgive everyone and everything is so important for your advancement, and for you to become more whole, for you to begin making more money, for you to begin, enjoying your experience.
Yeah.
This weight of, being wrong and these justified grievances that we carry, they do nothing. They do not serve us. In fact, they hold us back. And that's something Wayne definitely touches on a multitude of levels.
Yeah, and it is. He even talks about the paradox of stuff. And paradox is a very interesting thing, because if we actually understood how the laws work, these concepts wouldn't necessarily be paradoxical. They just would be normal. And what I mean is, we were taught to work hard and do this and grunt and get above everybody and do better than somebody else in the competitive way, and therefore you'll do better. But if you actually start looking at life where the person that you're trying to compete against could be someone you collaborate with, you both will expand at equal rate, or even at a quicker rate than you would have in the act of competing. So we say, when you do something the opposite of that, when you actually allow the person to, if they want to cut you off and win the race, let them. Because in the end, more people will want to hang out with you and do more business with you, because the cheater that tried to cheat you, you just forgave them. Who the hell would not want to do business with you? And we look at that as paradoxical, but if everyone started out that way, we wouldn't need the idea of paradox, the opposite in the understanding. But because the world we do live in, this is a paradox. And when you trust it, you just hold your own and you maintain that. Because I still work on that. Like, stuff will happen, I'll get upset at people. And I'll spend at 2 hours. Like, if something bad happens, I'll spend a couple of hours a day, going from being pissed to I should forgive them. But when I say I should forgive them, it's just my mind talking. I don't really feel it. But then I come to a place where I really feel it. I'm like, not only is it not helping me, but I don't want anyone to be harmed. I want everyone to do well, regardless if I thought they did me wrong. And all of a sudden, when I really, truly feel it, it's amazing what happens. It really works. It's not just me saying, oh, I don't care, that person, they can't get me. When I'm usually saying that, it means I really, deep down, I don't want everyone out there to know that, but deep down, it's not like, oh, motherfucker,
Yeah.
And even I get to different levels, it still pops up. But what I've noticed about me is the period of time in which I'm angry or put off is very narrow. Mm-hmm. And when it's narrow, all of a sudden, I see the synchronicity come out. Once I let go of it, all of a sudden, right then and there, shit happens. So then I tell myself, why'd I even get upset in the first place? So the next time something happens, the narrative is smaller, mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, yeah.
Well, that's so well said. That's exactly how I feel. And for those listening at home, this is a process. So when something comes up and it's holding your attention, et cetera, what used to make you upset for a week and you'd carry for a week turns into 5 days, and then 5 days turns into 2 days, and then 2 days turns into 2 hours, and then 2 hours turns into a half hour. The way you view you are retraining your mind. And that's what we're doing is it gets easier and easier once you begin to apply these concepts. You realize, when that feeling comes up, oh, wow, this sense of pain, anger, envy, whatever that comes up is temporary, and it's something you don't need to hold on to or attach to, and you let go of it. And like Frank said, new opportunities, the situation works itself out. You'll be blown away by how things can work themselves out. They work themselves out in a way that we could never imagine. And there's infinite possibilities that something can work out. And just because we at home can't think of how this situation could work out or be better or whatever, we have to truly let go of that and have total faith, that it will work out.
Yeah, and once you do this, like, the faith isn't something that, like, I just hope it works. It's not hope.
It's a knowing.
So when I know this, like, for an example, like what I would say, or say a narrative, I'll tell the story. But, like, if I'm angry, it's like putting blindfold on and wondering why I can't see the road ahead. But when I let go of the anger, it's lifting the blindfold and I can see. So it's not like I have to go through this process. I'm like, why am I putting the blindfold on in the first place? Because what that person did, like if someone did something to me putting a blindfold is just going to make it worse, not better. And all of a sudden, when that something happens, I get caught off guard. I pull down the blindfold, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I can't see the road, so I pull it up. So, yeah, it's like giving your attention to the rearview mirror rather than the windshield of life.
One thing that I want to add to that is we live in a very materialistic world, and we live in a world where media, movies, social media, all these things, they encourage and kind of cultivate you to stay angry, and I guess they condone it in a way, like it's like, yeah, you shouldn't have been wrong like that. You deserve to feel that way. And this keeps you trapped. So I really, really want to show people that anytime that we are justifying a grievance, or anytime we feel like we're allowed to feel that way, that's a mistake. That's something we really want to look at.
Yeah, because the world will actually agree with you.
The world will tell you, yeah, hell yeah, you deserve to feel that. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
How could somebody treat you like that? You don't deserve that.
But if you become like a top NBA player in basketball, and you see this happen, like it happens in other sports, but usually it's more obvious in NBA. So when a player gets fouled, it gets to the free throw shot lane, and everyone that doesn't like that team behind the goal is doing everything they can to distract them. Everything's flying up. They're making a lot of noise. And when you look at the distance between the player, like they do it in football too, but the people are so far off from it's very easy to shut them out. Like the noise in football, they have to do noise. But in the NBA game, when you're watching it, the people aren't that far behind the net. And if they're like halfway up in the aisle, like the player can actually see them. Mm-hmm. But the great NBA players don't see them. Now imagine they miss, like, well, the person was waving their arms, and it's like at that level, they're like, dude, that's not a good excuse. You haven't paid millions of dollars. Yeah. So what we're here to say is, and what Wayne Dyer was teaching people is, be the NBA player in your life. Stop using excuses to why, and shut that out. And when you shut that out, you make the free throw every time.
That's it.
And that's the game. And you got to keep doing it. It doesn't mean you get it once. You like a guy who gets the free throw, you just give a high five. Why? Because he's got another one to go, another one to go, another. It never ends, and you keep maintaining that. But the higher we get into the level of consciousness, the more intricate we have to get. And it's not like I could watch the news or I could see the person waving their arms, but it has no effect on me.
No.
Unless I fall into that place, it has effect on me, and then why did I get affected by that?
Well, and you also start to, like, when you're talking with like friends and family, you'll start to pick up on these different narratives that people kind of carry with them each and every day. And whenever we're talking or interacting with others, you'll start to see that people are only talking about their problems in a way for you to validate the way you feel, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I am interacting with my inner being in everything. This is how I feel, so it's being reflected to me and my friend. It's being reflected back to me and my family member. Yeah. And so you see the illusion for what it is, and then you take a step back. You go to that silent place, and you be, you recalibrate, if you will.
Yeah, I remember Wayne Dyer was doing it's on PBS. He was doing a fundraiser, and he did this talk. And I remember he was telling the story, and he'd been living down in Florida for a while, and he was walking along the beach. And this happened with him in like within a month's time, where he was he's at this time people knew who he was, and they run up. And he was walking along the beach in the early morning, and someone ran into him and said, "Hey, Wayne Dyer." I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" All of a sudden, they're like, "I'm thinking about moving down here." And I think they lived in Virginia at the time. He's like, "What's it like down here? Like, how are the people?" And Wayne Dyer looks at him. It's like, "Well, how are the people in Virginia?" They're like, "Well, they were lovely. Everything. I just got a job opportunity. I want to move down there. But we had great friends. We had this. I love the people. I love the atmosphere and everything." And Wayne Dyer's like, "You got to find the same thing here." And they went on, and he's like, "Thank you," and he walked on. And about a month later, he was on the beach, kind of same thing, and someone ran into him from, I think he said, New Jersey. And this could have happened from the person in Virginia or New Jersey. It doesn't matter. I'm not stating that, but the attitude, because it doesn't matter. But so, again, he walked along and said, "Hey, Wayne Dyer's talking a little bit." He goes, "Hey, I'm thinking about moving. I'm actually considering moving down here, and I'm from New Jersey." And it's like, "Well," it's like, how is it down here? Would you recommend me moving down here? And he's like, "Well, how is it New Jersey?" He's like, "Oh, couldn't stand the people. Hated the traffic. It rained a lot, all this stuff." And he's like, "You're going to find the same here." And his what the point, and obviously you can see.
By the way,
point.
that's one of my favorite stories. I love that because that's the truth, right?
It's a great point. Is wherever you go, there you are. So yes, opportunity brings you somewhere. But when I pack my bags, what else am I packing? I'm packing my attitude. Now, sometimes when you move places, that's why you can move somewhere, the not knowing, the excitement can generate excitement. But if you had the same attitude, after a week, a month, a year, you're going to find the same bullshit that you felt elsewhere. So if you're moving because you're running from something, it will catch up to you no matter where you're running. And that was the point of it. And so every day, if you complained about yesterday, it's going to catch up with you today. It always does. But why am I complaining? What part do I have in this, Mm-hmm. And when I would listen to him years ago, I would question it. I'm like, yeah, what part do I have in this? And little by little, reading these different books, I changed, I went from, God.
The world's happening to me.
God. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then someone, how's it going? I'll tell you how it's going. Mm-hmm. And I was a good storyteller that way.
Well, one thing I do want to say about that, too, is I've touched on this in other episodes, but we think that if we're not enjoying our time and we're upset, as we're experiencing something, we kind of feed off of this in this weird way where we kind of play like, this can't be my fault, or I can't be the one in charge, because if I was, I would not feel this way. I would not be angered. I would not be angry. I would not be sad. I would not be depressed. Like, how could I be in control? And there is nothing more false than that. But we act as if, well, of course I'm not having a good time, so I can't be in control. And this is where a lot of us are lost, and myself being included. I remember that feeling, being like, what do you mean I'm in control? If I was in control, I wouldn't be pissed off. I wouldn't be annoyed by this. Like, I wouldn't constantly be chasing money. I wouldn't constantly chasing this, whatever it is. And it wasn't until I realized, oh my goodness, I'm playing into this role, that things began to change for me personally. And so look at that. Next time you see yourself, feeling justified in your grievance, it is not justified.
Yeah. And what Mike and I are saying here, and Wayne Dyer, I learned this from him, people are going to rip you off. Someone is going to cut you off. These situations, circumstances are going to happen. So these attitudes that me and Mike, and obviously talking about Wayne Dyer, aren't going to prevent those things from happening. You're just not going to you're going to learn not to get caught up in them. So that's why people saying, "Oh, I'm a good person. Why is it raining out?" Like, well, we're not here to control the rain. We're here to control the perception of the rain. All right. Why is the rain bad? And I'll tell you why the rain's bad. Because if you're a little kid when it rained out, if you lived in a place where it rained a lot, your mom not liking to clean up and mop up the floors every day made you stay in. So you actually associated rain with something bad, or you got older and your car flooded and they had to pay for that. So we associate these things with they're bad. But when I was a kid when it was raining out, my mom wasn't anywhere around to pull me in. It was the best thing in the world. I ran and jumped in puddles. I remember getting on my bicycle. We had in front of my in front of my house, the street dipped down a little bit, and the water would get up to it was pretty high. Mm-hmm. And me and my friends would come in, and we'd go as fast as we can and spray it up till my mom came out and yelled at us.
Tear through those puddles.
Because what happens, I'm going to walk in the house dripping wet. I just came out of a pool and walk across the parquet wooden floors. My mom will just freaking break my neck for doing that, And I think if I ran fast, less water would get on the floor, right? I became like a sprinkler in my house. So that's how the association affiliation of rain became bad. Mm-hmm. But you don't know it subconsciously. That's what kind of and that's the story I tell you. It could be different for everybody else. But as I got older, I'm like, why is rain bad? Why don't I get wet? I'm like, well, you get wet every day when I take a shower. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have your clothes on. I'm like, yeah, it's grand. But there's umbrellas and stuff like that. But it's never killed anyone. The only one I've ever seen rain kill was the Wicked Witch of the West. It melted the shit out of my melting. Yeah. Yeah. So, unless you have a blow dryer in your hand, I don't suggest you jump in water. But it's not going to kill you. So when you start to look at these perceived things, I'm like, why does this upset me? There's circumstances and situations going on, and you can choose to be upset, and guess what? The world will back you.
Yep. Well, ultimately, what Frank and I are saying is, this is you versus yourself every day.
Not you versus the rain.
No,
the rain.
This is you versus yourself. Yeah. Some subconscious belief of, something that happened 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, of why you didn't like a situation because it didn't turn out, in the outcome you were hoping for. So take a break. Anytime you feel yourself getting stressed, getting angry, upset for whatever reason, go, whoa. What am I seeing in myself? What is this? Why is this coming up? That's true growth.
Why am I still carrying this thing that happened 3 days ago? Why am I still walking around?
And this gets easier. It's repetition of saying, whoa. I'm in control of this situation. Why am I feeling these emotions come up? Analyzing it.
Yeah. And and the more you go down that road, the more refinement happens. So now when I get upset at something, it turns into shortly thereafter, it turns into a funny story because that's how I get out of things.
You reframe it.
I reframe it, and then it becomes a funny story. Mm-hmm. And then Karen's like, I think you have enough funny stories. You don't need anymore.
Quit reframing this shit, Frank.
Just start out on that footing. I'm like, yeah.
There you go.
Okay, darling.
Okay. Let's jump into our first clip.
All right. Anyone will do, right?
Yeah, I said we just kind of kick it off.
All right, here we go. Wayne Dyer.
Now, the poet was speaking about dying, leaving the body. I'm not. I think we can come to know that place from which we originated and live from it. And then the words that Jesus spoke to us in the book of John, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. It was Jesus who said, when he was about to be stoned for blasphemy, and he said, why would you stone me? And they said, you blaspheme. You claim to be God. You are a man. And he said, is it not written in your laws that I have said, you are gods, all of you? The infinite place within you that needs to expand and wants to grow, that which we call your life. I mean, when my mother died, she was down to about 85 pounds. But if they were to weigh her the second before she died, and then weigh her the second after, her body weighed exactly the same. And yet, she was no longer alive. So her life, that what we call her life, is weightless. It's formless. It has no beginning. It has no end. You can't weigh it. How can you weigh that which has no form? So your life, the thing that we call your life, is God. That's what you are. That's what every single one of us are. So here's what Saint Germain said. The attitude of one who wishes to work in conscious cooperation with the ascended host should not be, I wish I could go to them for instruction, but rather, I will so purify, discipline, and perfect myself and become such an expression of divine love and wisdom and power that I can assist in their work. Then I will automatically be drawn to them. If you want to attract into your life what it is that you feel is missing, then what you have to do is to become like these great ascended masters.
Well said.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? I love that. I love
is.
that.
And I remember other people have talking about this. I think it was one of the Maharashis. Maharashi is kind of like a label, but I remember I think it was on 60 Minutes or something, and there's a reporter.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
about him, and the reporter was kind of snarky, because the guy was talking, and eventually came to the point. It's like, "Are you telling me you're God like that?" Like, and he tell was snarky, and he goes, "Yes, but so are you. The only difference is, I know it, and you doubt it." And it was very profound. Exactly what Wayne Dyer is talking about. That the God within us is kind of like, think about like, and I'm going to use this just as an analogy, but on a movie set, look at the director as God. It's directing the acting. But we always focus on the actors. You never see the director. And the director then can be correlated into our imagination as the individual that has the thing that plays it out, my personality, but they are my imagination where it comes from. Because everything that is physically was once imagined. So prior to it becoming physical, it came from this field of energy that it was weightless, like Wayne Dyer said. And we then drew it into the physical manifestation. So if you're getting upset at the physical manifestation, like, yeah, you created it. It was in your mind.
Yep.
So I remember hearing people saying, that person has a lack of imagination. Like, no one has a lack of imagination, but they might not have the control over the imaginative thought or experience they want to have. So if you want to have a fun experience and you're always imagining humdrum, it's your imagination that's going to precede the physical world. It's actually going to be created. And then you look at it like, this is why we're upset when we look at our life. Well, who created it? But if you understand you created it, and if you're a director making a movie and you don't like this movie, well, scrap that movie and make another movie. Don't like, I made one movie that was bad. I'm like, a lot of people make bad movies. But that's what makes you, it teaches you to make a better movie. So our imagination within us is the weightless thing. That's the God within us. And as we start to exercise that better, we have more control over the world around us. And then the circumstance situation, they're just mere props on the setting. You know?
Well, I want to tell this story. I don't know if you remember this, Frank. This was probably like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. No, it was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, unless it was a couple days ago.
I think this was like in like 2019. So like, or maybe it was the end of 2018. I don't remember. So this is when I was first kind of getting into these different concepts. And I remember I was doing like meditations and stuff with Frank. Frank was holding these meditations, after hours at his business.
After hours.
You were? And I was
party.
going, and I was getting into this meditation. I was learning about myself and what I was. This is before I've watched anybody on YouTube or anything. Like, I didn't know of any of these spiritual teachers. I was stuck in my third dimensional, viewpoint of, I'm separate from the world, right? And so, like, it was through meditation and through listening, Frank kind of talk about these concepts that I remember. I'll never forget this. I was driving home one night after, one of our sessions, and I'm on the freeway, and I can picture the lights, everything exactly how it was. And I remember thinking to myself, like, it came to me, I was like, oh my God, like, I am God. And I felt this weird, like, thing in the pit of my stomach. And I was like, is this blasphemy? Like, well, I was raised in a Catholic household. I've gone to Catholic school my whole life. But I was like, I am God, based on what we're being, based on what I, was experiencing, feeling, learning about, etc. And I was really nervous to say this to Frank because, I didn't know how he'd take it if he had taken it the wrong way. And I vividly remember this.
I threw a stone at him.
So it yeah, seriously, I'm a stone. So I went to, I was going to talk to him next week. And then I think I didn't because I was too nervous. So then it was like the second week after this realization for myself. And I remember I pulled him aside right before our meditation, because this was in a group setting. And I was like, hey, I got to tell you this is how I'm feeling. And I'm like, I know this sounds weird, but I think I'm God. But you are God too. And I was like, does that make sense? And Frank looked at me and he started laughing. And you were like, you are. And I was just blown away by this because I had never witnessed any of these teachers or anything like this, but this was all a feeling because I started to go back into, wait, so the church used to, burn witches at the stake because they were, speaking outside of the church. They were making things happen through manifestation that wasn't explainable. And so what did the church do? We labeled it as witchcraft. We labeled it as satanic when, in fact, we all have this and always have had these abilities. And so then it all kind of clicked for me, and I go, oh, my God, I'm the creator of everything I'm experiencing. The kingdom of heaven is within me. I am a part of this source. And I was so nervous to tell Frank that because I thought it was going to be viewed as blasphemy. And he literally looked at me, smiled, and you were like, dude, you get it.
Yeah.
It's all clicking for you now.
Now to clarify this,
that was one of the coolest moments with you, by the way.
Yeah, I remember that. And
Yeah.
I do remember that. But to clarify this too, like what Mike is talking about, and for anyone that's trying to get this concept, my persona isn't God.
No.
Frank Daly isn't God. There's something in me. But when the Frank Daly part of me listens to that place, I become more pure. As Mike was talking about, the witchcraft stuff like that, it was blasphemy. What's very interesting, the very people that chose to stone people and burn people alive at the stake, whatever harm it came because of the misunderstanding or the idea that they were being blasphemy based on saying they were God. If they were confronted by Jesus, they would have been the same. Because you hear the story about Jesus, which they are praising. All of a sudden, he did all these things, but yet he was of the flesh. And he, as Wayne Dyer said in the very beginning of this, in one of the passages in the Bible, even the least among you can do as I've already done, and even greater, was the word spoke. So anyone that ever tries to debate me on that, I say this, I'm like, these aren't my words. This is from the Bible in which you read. And they look at me, and I'm like, there are so many passages in the Bible that could be looked at differently, but how do you look at that one differently? Even the least among you, can do as I've already done, and even greater. Where is the interpretation of that? He's pretty much saying, even the least among you can do exactly what I did, and even greater. Why greater? Because he's only going to be here 33 years.
Well,
He never had an iPhone. So if he had, imagine Jesus had an iPhone.
he would have so many followers on Instagram.
Yeah. What kind of app do you think he would have?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So this was hard for me to understand, guys, because I went to Catholic school my whole life. I was raised this way, blah, blah, blah. A lot of conditioning, a lot of layers of belief on top of each other. And so...
But they told us every Sunday that the Spirit was within you.
They did.
Yeah.
So, but you begin to look and see, all the value in the, in the Bible and what the teachings are about. And then you see the way that it was, I don't want to say spun, but a way that it was, explained to the masses was actually in a way for control. This was back in the time. We got to go back when, the church was started and how this all worked. So there was a lot of different things that were added to the Bible, subtracted to the Bible. The Roman Empire had a huge influence on the New Testament.
Yeah, Constantine. Yeah.
So to sit there and not look at this from that historical perspective of, a man, was changing the words, of the Bible years after, and what's been picked and choose from, is all that was shared with us. Even to this day, we have the Vatican Library where we, for some reason, do not have the ability to go and see these documents that are thousands of years old. We don't have the ability. In fact, they're kept.
Well,
you know,
yeah, you could do it not through the Vatican though, because the Dead Sea Scrolls actually. So back many years, I forgot what century it was, but when people would go through like lands like Tibet and stuff like that, the Tibetan monks would take any documentation and write it down. So in the library,
the stacks.
So the actual Bible was fully recorded. So when they actually, and then it was in the 4th century when Constantine came and put the New Testament together and created. And again, I don't know the intention of Constantine or anyone. Was it bad, or a lot of times people like you're a parent and you don't tell your kid everything because you think it will harm them or they won't understand it. So the narrative is not to control people, but not to harm them. So people you hear about the government telling you about UFOs because we don't want to scare the shit out of people. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are probably people out there that manipulating it and stuff like that, but sometimes people manipulate the narrative because they think you won't be able to handle it.
Yep.
All right. So it's very difficult to tell by any idea at the moment right now what their intention was. But that being said, I don't care what their intention was at all. All of a sudden, I no longer listen to other people to tell me what not to do, what to do. But what I do is with everyone in my life, I use them as a backboard, if you will. Someone to collaborate with. Even if someone's trying to tell me false information, it strengthens my idea to let me further investigate in this. If this information is going to help advance me in my world, and I need it because that's why they're here giving it to me, I want to do a little more investigating rather than just do soundbite living. Mm-hmm. People are doing soundbite living all the time, and I can hear them talk about this person. Oh, this guy's mean. He's this and that. And I'm like, no. I'm like, not. I don't gather that. I'm like, did you ever read? It's like, no, I heard someone talking about him. I'm like, oh, you heard someone talking about this person and you deem him to be mean and bad, but you've never read their body of work? I'm like, they may be bad, they may be so, but unless you've read their body of work, you can't make a decision like that. And because of sound-biting situations, people are doing that. Like even like me and Mike, we have the person who produced us, Kayla, mm-hmm. and she'll put out like the full-length video, and if you listen to it, if you get it, if you don't, individuals have their comments, but so often we get comments on the long ones that they seem to be, pretty agreeable and thank you, whatever. But when the shorts come out, which is very interesting, like a 36 second soundbite, people come in, it's like, that's blasphemy. And I'm like, well, if you listen to the other side of it, and it's interesting because, it's to sink people in, so when I hear something, I'm like, that's weird. And if it resonated with me and I'll find the full length video or read the book where that little caption came from. Because sayings are really good for t-shirts, but where did the saying come from? What's on both sides of the saying? That's what I want to know about, and that's what we're encouraging people to do, is to spend your life investigating your life. Don't let other people to tell you how to think.
I love that you brought that up. So I just saw a crazy headline. I forgot even what it was, but it was something just very out there. It was like
that's like every day.
Well, it was so funny because I think it was like the headline was something about like UFOs discovered with marijuana, on board or something ridiculous. And it was like
could have been.
And I clicked on it and it starts and it's like, so research has shown that people will actually share articles based on a headline before actually reading that article. This headline is completely false, and we hope you are not part of this. And then you go to the comments of this Facebook post, and it was like, oh my God, can you believe aliens are getting high and all this stuff? And there's like a few comments riddled within 200 comments that are like, clearly nobody actually read it, Yeah. And it's so funny because that was the purpose of it. It generated all these comments of people going back and forth, this can't be true, etc., or oh my God, this is ridiculous. And right there, right when you click on it, it says this article was solely, chosen for you to click and see if it would be shared.
I know this. Like,
I was like, wow.
But that's the point Mike's making. I'm going to go back to the analogy I used, the NBA player at the free throw line. When the player that gets a free throw line never misses, guess what happens? The people behind stop waving their arms. It's useless. But if they had a shot of him missing the throw, they're going to do it. But after a while, like, why bother? It's not going to help. And that's what happens is eventually when people stop buying into this, these soundbite people will go away. But I have nothing against the soundbite people. They keep me honed in. Like sometimes they may bring a point up. I'm like, oh, let me look into this. I'm not going to run with it. I'm like, because years ago I did that. I watched the news. Oh, you're not going to believe it. And I was like the one breaking the news, And I had no idea what I was talking about. None. Because then somebody, half-wit intelligent would ask me questions, and I have to make shit up.
Trying to figure that out.
Well, the propaganda and blah, blah, blah. And I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Then I'm like, fuck, I have to go back this up now. Sorry about using the F word.
Well, no, that's like where 90% of the world is we our news is us reading our phone headlines and then saying we've done our research.
Yeah.
And us being like, oh, I made my decision. Can you believe this person did that? No verification. No us reading between the lines. When I promise, if you were to read in between, you go, I didn't see it that way. No. I didn't see it as the person saying that. And we twist until the story fits the narrative that we would like.
But it only in that moment, because lately I've been reading a lot about this guy named Graham Hancock, and he's a reporter on archaeology findings and stuff like that. And we know this, like throughout time. When I was in school, they told you how old Earth is. Mm-hmm. Now the estimation. Oh my God, I can't even speak. It estimated around 13 billion years or something like that, right? And give it another 10 years, it'll go beyond that. But he was talking about I think he just recently wrote a book within the last 2 years on America, and they're finding stuff within North and South America with civilizations that lived maybe even longer perhaps than what they found in Africa, all right? And this is me just indicating this information because I'm starting to read it, so I'm not by any means an expert in this. But it lets you know that every time someone tries to solidify something into fact, someone along the line that spends their life on it will keep expanding it. And we're finding more and more about our life. And one of the things is there might be a truth, what we call a half-truth, that lasts only in the moment. But the truths that me and Mike are trying to convey and live by are ones that never change. Everything else is just a story. Like the truth that right now I'm 54 years old, but come next Friday I'll be 55. So the truth of me being 54 will change in just a matter of a week.
Is your birthday next Friday?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I was trying to spin
nice.
that. I was trying to let everyone know. So, happy birthday wishes.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I wear a size. No, I was kidding.
I wear a size. I love it.
I like chocolate cake.
Hell yeah, Frank.
So that truth in the moment only lasts, but and that's kind of how it is in the ideas of people. But why it keeps changing is because in the field of quantum physics, they've explained this through the double slit experiment to some degree. I would love to have like a quantum physicist and all these different people together because they're all coming from the same viewpoint or talking about life differently, but sometimes they'll say, oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about, person doesn't know what they're talking about. But the truth is, yes, if someone stated something now, if they measured something from a factual standpoint or they did a study right now, this is where we are based on the belief structure which we had thus far. But there's nothing to say that if we start to slowly, individually and collectively change our belief structure that we can get there. It was humanly impossible to run the 4-minute mile. And that was broken, back in the 70s? I could completely off, but it's been a while. Well, that shattered the belief. And all of a sudden, you can no longer say it's impossible.
Yeah, people used to believe you physically cannot. Your heart will explode.
And guess what? There were people trying to do it, and they couldn't. And these people were top athletes. So it's not like when they made the statement, it wasn't like they were wrong. But to say it can't be done always makes you wrong in what we call history. Yeah, right now. So when I'm living in the world right now, I'll say anything's possible. Yes. But I'm also a practical person. What is probable right now to happen? So if we start making policies or decisions in our life without the actual probability, it's going to hurt you. yes, it's possible for me to do this, possible for me to do that. So, like, is it possible for me to be like a professor at Harvard? Yes. What's the probability right now? You know, did you go to Harvard, or did you get a degree in which you become a professorship? No. Well, if I start right now and do this, maybe in 8 years I can have the ability to do that. And as the 8 years pass by, I got my degrees and everything else. Now it's actually probable. So I measure my life with probabilities, and in order to advance my probabilities, I change and know it's possible, but I do the work now. I stay in this moment now. And that's where a lot of people, when we talk about this stuff of possibility, I'm like, yeah, but you also have to be real, because in the physical world, the energy is expressed through the physical world. And the better we get at it, you could shorten the distance between the gestation of the idea and the fruition of it coming. But nonetheless, the gestation is the act of which learning becomes, so you shouldn't avoid it. And so me and Mike want to make that clear, that all these things are possible, but where are you individually, and where are we as a society on the field of probability? And understanding that is kind of why me and Mike have this podcast. I want to shorten that gap to get to this place, and I know it's possible. But what's the probability? Well, the probability is good right now that more humans are coming together and collectively and understanding. A gentleman like Wayne Dyer helped that along, because prior to that, you had to find stuff in the book, but he came on television where he wasn't religious, but he wasn't anti-religion either. So if you were any religion, whether it was Jewish, Muslim, Christian, you would listen to his information and apply it to your own day-to-day life. So he didn't have that. He had that very neutral state. And I believe, and that's kind of how we helped advance the ideas of these principles to come into light, is where we are right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know if Jesus walked through the door right now, he wouldn't say, this religion's wrong, and this one's right.
If he walked through the door right now, imagine how ratings would go up.
Oh, shit, we got
Jesus here. Come on, Jesus.
Jesus, pull up a seat.
Yeah, take my seat.
Pull up a seat.
Would you like some water? You could turn it into wine.
Yeah, I was going to say, care for some water or wine?
Frank, that's just sit down.
Blasphemy.
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 Yeah. Can you imagine Jesus came and threw rocks at us right now?
We were stoned by Jesus.
Yeah. Well, Jesus can, right? They said, who he has not sinned may throw the first stone.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that joke?
Which one?
He's like, he's in the, they were getting ready to stone a woman.
Uh-huh.
And he gathers a crowd and says, he who has not sinned may throw the first stone. And all of a sudden he gets hit in the head. He goes, Mom, stop it.
I've never heard that. That's a good one. That is funny. So let's dive into our next clip.
All right, here's Wayne Dyer.
We do not manifest what we want. That comes from a place of missing. We manifest what we are. The angels who will guide you throughout your life will only be there for you when they recognize themselves in you. And they cannot recognize themselves in you and guide you when you are filled with hatred, anger, judgment, condemnation, bitterness, fear, anxiety, stress. You have to let all of that go and be love. Be in this place of perfect divine love. Love for everything and everyone on our planet. That's self-actualization.
I love how he said that.
Such a great way to describe, the amount of, I guess, experience that's thrown at us. For him to bring up the trash thing, I can list 5-10 things, from yesterday that came up, that I had to consciously say, hey, that doesn't serve me. Yeah. Hey, that doesn't serve me, which is what he's referring to when he says the trash or the delete. We're constantly aware, of what's coming into our perception, and then we choose what to attach to. And that's what he's getting at with this.
Yeah, because when we look at the outside world, whatever's coming through, our imagination, what forms the story like a movie does. So, like everything in the physical world is a mere prop. But if I take the broom, I can sweep with it. But if I take the broom and put it in a witch movie, it becomes a flying object or a vessel in which someone can fly on. But yet, when you look at it from what it is, it's a broom all day long. I could pull the end off and make a stickball bat out of it. But yet, it's still a broom in the idea of what we call a broom. But we actually give it the meaning in the moment in which we are. So
Through
when
our
something
imagination.
happens, my imagination will be like, oh, shit. Well, ask yourself, do I like that storyline? Do I like that narrative? How does it make you feel? Well, I don't like it. Or why did you choose that? Because this is the meaning it was given. I'm like, that was a meaning a person or a society may have given it, but you have the ability to override that meaning with something else. I could take the broom and make it into a flying vessel just through my imagination. Why wouldn't you choose that? And your imagination is the greatest tool, like you said. So we go within and use our imagination. Don't let anyone change that, because you're the one changing it based on buying into somebody else's imagination rather than your own. And that's the greatest gift that we have, is our imagination.
It really is.
Use it, yeah.
Well, and then when this starts to sink in, this imagination, there's like deeper levels to this, and you see that everything that you're experiencing, every interaction from the moment that your eyes open every day is your imagination coming to life. And I think it's in our next clip, but he talks about the subconscious and the conscious mind. And this was the subconscious mind and the conscious mind was the starting point for me to understanding this experience that we call life. We have a subconscious and a conscious mind, okay? And this picture like an iceberg. This is the best way it's ever been described to me. And you see this tip of this iceberg coming out, and that's our conscious mind. 5% of our day is controlled by our conscious mind. What we're, putting our attention onto, us saying, no, I don't need to feel that way. Then underneath is 95%, this huge, bottom of the iceberg. Is it hermetics, the as above, so below, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in hermetics, the as above, so below, same type of concept. What we're feeling and experiencing in the subconscious mind is what we see and perceive through the imagination on this screen that we call reality. And so as we begin to reprogram the subconscious mind, and delete, trash these excess thoughts, we begin to actually walk into an entirely different experience. And this is why people talk about, as you begin to look at things differently, things begin to change. And it's because you're clearing out these old subconscious beliefs about right, wrong, how things should be, how they shouldn't be. And you are only just... You are just experiencing it. And it's in that where there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad, that you begin to really experience life.
Yeah. And where the idea of good and bad came in from, because there is an understanding of that. No one denies it. But empirically, I think it's the way we start producing through our imagination that's not preferential and collaborative and expansive. So in the field of like energy, you want energy to be integrative, expansive, not separate and breaking apart. So that'd be called the negative aspect of energy, where the positive side of it would be uplifting. So there is an understanding of good and bad and explain that way. But when you look at it from that way, how is this working? Is this advancing everyone around you and yourself at the same time? Or is it breaking it apart? Well, that's bad. Now, somebody could be doing the same exact thing, talking about the same thing, but in their narrative, they're incorporating and expanding, and things are working out good for them. So that would be positive. So it's not what they're doing, it's how they feel about what they're doing. So a lot of times people will take what's being done, and because they saw it work negatively, it says no one should do that. But yet it's because the way they approached that in the attitude that brought it down, right? But it's how we approach it, how we look at it, and when we change it. So it's never that. It's my intention along with that. What do I want to do with that? Because that's just a mere prop.
Another thing is we often view that good or bad, like bad things shouldn't happen. What we would consider to be bad or consider to be negative, that they should not happen. And I believe it's the next video too. Wayne Dyer helps us to see that there is a place for every type of feeling. And for us to think that nothing bad or nothing we see as bad or feel as negative should ever happen again is absolutely ridiculous on its face. And this is where the yin and the yang the yin and the yang symbol comes from. The we have to, just the positive and the negative, this is a whole experience. And on like this pole or scale, if you will, it's a balance. And so we could never experience these great highs or these great loves or these this love or something that you truly, truly enjoy if we didn't have an opposite of that. And that's how we experience life. If everything was just amazing, we wouldn't know what was more amazing or what wasn't, or what amazing really was, because it would just be our constant state of being. And so that's what this yin and yang life is it's moving through the ups and downs, understanding that, okay, this too shall pass, and this is not the end of the world. This is not the worst thing that's ever happened to me, etc. And there's a place for that, because it allows us to go within and analyze, where is this coming from? What am I to learn from this?
Yeah. And that's the other thing, the point Mike brought up about that. In the beginning, it seems like the yin and the yang is floating here, and it's when you're actually moving very low on this pendulum, it can take you and make you disoriented. But as we get higher up the pendulum, if you will, all of a sudden the flow of back and forth becomes more enjoyable. So the yin and the yang, at certain levels, and we know this as we go higher, of a greater understanding of this whole thing, it isn't scary and then happy. It isn't sad and whatever. It's more here. And all of a sudden you can handle that. And as we go to higher levels, because when you get into excitement, it's really good. But when you get into, you can see someone that's excited jumping up and down. But when you see someone in ecstasy, you have to really look at their eyes to realize they're there, because they're not physically outwardly expressing it. But yet that ecstasy is far greater than the excitement they did when they won the soccer game or the football game or whatever it was. Ecstasy was this place where nothing has to be done. This is great.
Total
but yet,
bliss.
There's still a yin and a yang within that field of ecstasy. It's not just one side. But the higher you get up on the pendulum, low here, you're seeing the whole swinging. But when I get higher, see how the same field does this. If I'm right here, it's like here. If I'm right at this pivotal point, I'm not doing anything. I'm actually steady. But as I move down into the field of life in the physical world, there is this. And as we start to understand the concept of the yin and yang, we move higher, we can regulate the emotional swing and not get erratic. But when we see people erratic, it's like, oh my God. I'm like, well, if you go a little higher, it's not, the same bar is moving, but yet here it's moving further and up here it's moving less. And so it's about getting more to a preferential place. So down here it's like bad, good, bad, good. And up here it's like, yeah, oh,
Great analogy, by the way. I love that, because that's the truth. As you begin to, level up, if you will, in these higher states of consciousness, these swings are not as drastic.
No,
because you know what's happening now.
But they're more subtle. But the subtlety, I was just talking to a guy at the gym today, and he's been training in different arts, like Thai boxing and stuff like that. And whenever I'm there, like, he'll ask me pointers on striking. I've been boxing since a little kid, so like, he watched me punch, and he's trying to figure it out. And I'm like, it's the most subtle thing. You work on the subtlety, because now you have the framework down. The beginning of learning anything, is a lot of information. But if you stay at something, all of a sudden, I just need to know this little nugget, and that little nugget changes everything. And today he came up to me, he goes, oh my God, I was sparring with somebody, and I just learned this little subtle move, and all of a sudden I got into the flow of it. He goes, that little change made my growth expand so much better than everything I was doing down here. And I'm like, that's what it is, and it never ends. It's so subtle, but it changes everything, and that's the excitement of it. The experts or the martial artist that gets into the black belt, they're learning more through that one little, like, if they're in jiu-jitsu, I'm just grab and tuck my head in a little bit and get my body a little closer. That one thing is more profound than when they moved up from all the belts to get to the black belt. It's this intricate moment, the higher you get. It's these little subtle things that bring real, immense joy, everlasting joy to life. And now we're at the point in humanity where everyone's looking for this distraction, like the sound bites. I'm like, no, it's a subtle bit of information that creeps in. That's what we're really thirsty for. That's everlasting. The other distractions, it's like, yeah, I have those. Like, I'm hungry and I eat. That's gone. Now what? But it's constantly looking for a new way of talking about the same thing me and Mike talk about every week, and it never ends. It never ends. That's where my immense joy comes from, not the mere satisfaction of eating a sandwich.
I like that.
But I need to eat the sandwich. But that, like, I'm hungry and then I eat and that goes away. But that other thing never goes away. Even after the show, right when me and Mike hit, we stop it and go this. Before he walks out the door, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? We study other people as best we can, and hopefully we do a pretty decent job. But if not, we're not done, you know. And if you guys point something out, please do. That's how we learn. That's how we all learn. We're here learning, having this great experience. And me and Mike just happen to do it on a mic.
I love that.
Yeah. Karen actually, she told me not to tell you this. She would have killed me.
So I'm going to say it live in front of everyone.
Yeah.
She told me not to tell you, so I'm going to tell it to the whole to everyone.
I know I'm going to get 12 minutes. I'm going to get
Nice,
12 minutes.
Frank.
So, you know, because we're expanding the show and trying to getting more guests, but getting guests on. Mm-hmm. So I told Karen, I'm like, I need to get another mic. She goes, but you already have a mic. He's your co-host.
But you already have a mic.
I'm like, you're funny. Like, I can't. I was like, do not tell Mike. I'm like, I gotta. I told him I gotta tell him.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, you don't.
I won't tell him. I'm just gonna tell our entire audience. That sounds like you, Frank. Yeah. Don't tell him. I'm gonna tell everyone.
And this is why my pendulum just swings all over the place, people. Yeah.
No, seriously, that's awesome.
You don't need another mic. You already got one.
Thank you, Karen.
Karen's funny.
Karen's always got my back.
Yeah. All right, here's another clip by Wayne Dyer.
That you say to yourself, there's a time for being exhausted, and there's a time for rest. There's a time for things not to work out. Imagine if you knew that in the midst of my working with my daughter, for example, when I see the struggle that she's going to, and I can stand back and say, there's a time for her to experience this, and there's a time for her not to experience it. If you read Katie's life, you'll see that there was a time for deep depression. There was a time for fear. There was a time for anger and worry and despair, deep despair. And when you're in those things, if you could step outside of yourself and look at it and say, there's also a time for its opposite. As long as I'm incarnated into a physical world, there's a time for all of it. And as you do, you get to a new place in your life where you begin to look at all the things that are happening to you, because you remember verse 40 of the Tao says, it's all about returning. It's all about returning. Returning to what? Returning to the place from which you originated.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we were just talking about. This pendulum, guys, that we're describing and what we're experiencing. Often it's always to say, oh, I don't want to experience that, or I just need to get through this, as if it's like something you do mentally, like what we're talking about is accepting everything as it is in this moment. Yeah. And that's what Wayne's talking about in this clip. He's saying there's a time to be in fear. There's a time to be angry. There's a time to be depressed, scared. All of these are very normal feelings, but these feelings need to be recognized, and they allow us to go within and see and find our true power, our true source, that we are the infinite. So we're not saying go bury your head in the ground, in the sand and not feel these emotions. No, absolutely feel them, but do not allow them to consume you. Do not allow them to define you.
Yeah, and also too, like, to anyone out there that's young and listen to me and Mike, because of like I'm older than Mike. All I have on Mike necessarily is more experience, and I probably went through these cycles more often than Mike, and Mike is getting this at a very young age. What happens is, once I've been through these cycles, this too shall pass isn't just a great phrase. I know it will. So when it's happening, I start out, this too shall pass. Now it's like, oh, there's going to be a shift in my life that's going to move me in a direction which I wanted to go, but at some point didn't make the choice to make the turn, so this is making the turn for me. And maybe because I couldn't see it, so I'm not blaming myself for not picking up the idea earlier. So when something shifts really quickly, my first thought now is, all right, my life's about to change in a more accelerated way, but it seems very turbulent, just kind of like when an airplane is at 30,000 feet going 500 miles an hour, you don't feel a thing. But when it starts ascending down to land, you can feel the G-force of the airplane. You can literally feel it. And all of a sudden, that discomfort is letting me know I'm about to land in the area which I want. So early on in life, I'm like, God, we're going to die. Now it's like, no, we're landing. But that feeling never goes away. But how the feeling comes in me, I express differently. I know what's happening. The plane's getting ready to land. I put my seatbelt on, my back tray up, and I never put the seat back. I just pretend someone could buy it. I don't get it. I'm trying to. I'm like, what's the big deal? Yeah.
I'm going to leave this.
Yeah. Now I'm marked. I'm going to be on the FBI list.
That guy never puts up his tray.
Hey, he talked about on his podcast. Make sure he puts up his seat, back of his seat. It's like 2 inches. Like, what's the difference, right? Anyway, I'm just being a nuisance right now. But now I understand it, and it generates an excitement, even though it's a discomfort feeling of having a G-force pull at you. So as you get to a different understanding, so anyone that's young, just yes, this is what we go through. I believe the younger generation will get through the gestation period quicker than mine, because that's called evolution, right? We figured out things more than my parents did, and my grandparents.
And with that comes bigger swings.
Yeah, but they'll be able to handle the bigger swings, and then all of a sudden, people can withstand their stomach of the bigger swing, and get more generated excitement out of it. So once I understood what was happening, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to crash, and no, we're just landing, and we're landing to the very place in which you want. So when something occurs in my life now that I couldn't foresee it happening, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this feeling is something's about to change. And if I hold and I don't turn around and go back, it's going to work out for me in the expansive way in which I asked for. But you're always going to go through some turbulence. That's just how life is. Taking off and landing, you're going to feel it.
A lot of us have heard this phrase, or have heard people at least say, like, right when you feel like you just can't, like that you're going to break, and you feel like you're at your bottom, push through. You're like right there. That's the reason they're saying that is what Frank just described so well with the analogy of the turbulence. So often things get so in a moment where you're like, I just can't handle this. And before we allow ourselves to fall apart, if you can break through, just on the other side of that is no suffering, is salvation, is what you're looking for. And I always remind myself this when I'm going through like rough stuff, whether it's with work, with a family relationship, whatever. Whenever I just feel like that, uncomfortable, I'm like, you know what this is, and you kind of rest into that, and you allow and accept every situation on its face. You accept everything as it is, and you move into it, not away from it. You don't let it to destroy it. You don't allow it to destroy you. And just on the other side of that is like when the sun starts coming back out. And then you can begin to look back and realize why it was necessary for you to go through that experience to become the man or woman you are in that moment.
Yeah. Because if you don't allow yourself to even step into the unknown every day, this is why life gets ruthless. It's because you're kind of trying to manipulate. It's like trying to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the same result every time.
Insanity.
Well, that part, like if it's not working. But in other words, like if the first time I ever had chocolate cake, it was great. But the second time, it was really good. But at the end of the night, if I ate the whole chocolate cake, I'm chasing this feeling that I had from the first time. So I'm not looking at that as insanity, but to some degree it is. But what it is maybe move on to a vanilla piece of cake or something else, because it's the unknown is where we find everything. And then we go to the unknown and we play around in the unknown. Then we get known to it. Once you get known to something, then go back into the unknown. But and I thought this too, I had to try to stay out this life, get to a certain point in my life where I can just cruise at 30,000 feet.
That's
and I'm
what
like,
we're all
yeah,
trying to
but
do.
I'm like, the point of flying somewhere isn't to be in the air. It's to get somewhere. So I'm constantly stepping into the unknown, and the beginning is very uncomfortable, but I understand. Now I don't freak out over it. And then when you're cruising, the cruising part, the altitude part, when you're at 30,000 feet, that's where you invest yourself in all the intricate information about that. And then when you get to a place where you're going to learn everything you need in the moment to learn, then you actually go ascend down into another G-force setting to go here. And then to do it all over again every day. Stepping into the unknown is what generates excitement. Because if I'm reading a book I've never read before, I have to really be focused. If I'm changing my diet in the physical world, I have to be focused. It's not the diet that worked. It's my focus that worked along with the diet. So it's very difficult to pull them apart. So when I focus on something I've never done, but if I keep doing the same workout over and over, after a while, it gets boring. But yet if I change it slightly every week, which I do now, it never gets boring. Some days I'm like, is this going to ever end? You know? But the excitement is why I don't say, is this ever going to end? But if I kept having to muster through doing the same thing over and over, the excitement is lost. Why? Because I know what's going to happen. But if I do something slightly different, I don't know what's going to happen. I have to stay alert, and the excitement never ends. If I eat a sandwich, I know I'm going to get full. And that's okay, but I don't want to experience that every day in my life. So I do different things, slightly different things within the same field. So if I have a sandwich, I might put something else, a little something else I never did on it. That changes the sandwich. These little subtle things change. It's not huge. It's subtle. People around you will notice how you feel and act differently, but you could be doing the same job, hanging around with the same people, but they'll notice something about you because you just changed it subtle. It's not like you moved and quit your job and got rid of this wife and got the other wife, or husband and got the new husband. Those are very drastic changes on the outside world. It's a subtlety that people are like, huh. Like I notice about myself in the subtlety. I'm like, oh, I have changed. And Karen's like, don't get full of yourself. You got more to change. No, go clean the yard.
But that is the truth. And I remember looking really into this whole definition of insanity once I started learning these concepts. And we are raised, at least in the Western culture, where we live in this world where, we're taught, we get up every day, we go to work. We're not happy. We come back, we make dinner or whatever, and we put on Netflix, and then we live until Friday, and then we enjoy Saturday, and then mourn on Sunday, and we get back up and we do it again. And we're taught that this is normal. But this, by definition, is the definition of insanity. We are all doing the same thing every day and expecting different results. But because this is happening on a collective level, we look at it and we say, oh, this is normal. I'm supposed to feel this way. I'm supposed to, live for the weekend. I'm supposed to, work and strive, and that's how you get there,
Yeah.
It's all illusion.
I think I could be wrong, but I think it was Mark Twain that had a saying that said, if you find yourself in the norm, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that sounds
If
like
you
Mark
find
Twain.
yourself in the masses, you're doing something wrong. And I know I'm not saying it properly, but you get the gist of it. And it's not about doing something different than others. It's just doing something different than you did yesterday, period. Why I think a lot of us suffer in this society is because there's this intricate part of us, or intricate teaching that we leave out. Because, I went to church as a kid, and they told you I was spirit, I was this. Jesus took our sins away and all this stuff, and you're like, oh, that feels good. But then they point out what's wrong with you, and you can't do that. So you're getting a mixed message. Everyone's getting a mixed message at the same time. So I have to decipher what is the truth and do what direction I have to find it, and stop telling myself mixed messages. I'm good, I'm bad, I'm good, I'm bad. Now I'm all of a sudden like bouncing back and forth. Well, we want to move in a continuous direction. Once in a while, like if we take one step back to a 3 forward, there's some progress there. But we want to move continuously through, even if it's one step at a time, in a direction. You see satisfaction there. You see ultimate satisfaction there beyond anything. And there's been mixed messages. You can do anything, but you can't. Mm-hmm. Now, this is where the fight comes in.
Because of this.
Yeah. Someone will tell you, and they're not lying to a degree. Like, imagine, I don't know the story of Spud Webb, but, he's an NBA player, and he was 5'6", and I'm sure, like, he's like, Mommy, I want to play basketball in the NBA. It's like, I'm making this up.
Except
I don't know.
you.
Yeah, well, how many basketball players made in the NBA that were under 6 foot?
Not a lot.
No, and he was not only under 6 foot, he was 5'6". But he narrowed the distance between possible and probable because he did the work. And there was something in him, whatever like that. Like, I'm not saying everyone at 5'6" should start. 5'6" should go out there and try to get in the NBA. That's not the point. Obviously, he was born into that idea. But yet, the narrative that most people say is, how the hell did he do that, only being 5'6"? Because he knew it was possible, but he also narrowed the field down into the probability, and once became in the NBA, it was no longer the word possible needed. He's doing it. And that's what it is. So the work is knowing what's possible and stop listening to people if it's driving you. Don't try to do something else that you don't want to do just because everyone else is doing it. And that's the Mark Twain thing. Like, this is why we're messed up. Everyone's trying to do the same thing, wear the same clothes, same hair. I'm like, that's just ridiculous, But we all come in with this feeling of what we move towards. Like, why do I prefer to do this over that? I'm like, well, it's part of my signature frequency, I guess. I can make up a story that I signed a contract coming in before I came in here, and I like that story, but I can't prove it to everyone else out there, so I don't really talk about that. But yet, I'm geared towards doing certain things. One of them being talk about the concepts that I try to understand in the moment in which I'm talking about it, and in front of people. I'm comfortable with that. But every time I do it, I narrow the gap of years ago. It was possible, but it certainly was not probable. And then I had to, I stalled a little bit, and I did more work and did this more intricate, stayed in the moment. And in the moment, I realized I can do this. And if I stop thinking of other people, that distance of probability close, and now it's doing impossible. Now my next possibility is how how broad of an audience might that be? Well, it's possible to have this many, but now I have to narrow the gap of probability. How do I do that? By staying focused. If I keep doing one step at a time, I move closer to the direction which I'm in. But if I doubt it, if I don't think it will work, I would be a moron to keep going in that direction. But why would I believe it wouldn't work? Because my imagination is saying so. Well, what happens if my imagination says it is possible? I keep taking step by step by step. The famous poem that every day, day by day by day, nothing changes. But when I turned around, everything was different. And I'm like, wow, that's how it works. So the intricacy in the moment is really key. Yes, looking out. Imagine myself already being there. That's a momentary thing, but now the work begins, and the work is fun. If I know it's going to work, it's fun. If I don't, I hear people complain doing all sorts of things like the gym, the diet, and why are they complaining? Because they don't think it will work. But they have to do something, so they do it. But if you believed it would work, the moment-to-moment enjoyment of it would be immense. It would be. And that's kind of, Wayne Dyer talked about this his whole life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect spot for us to end for today.
Yeah.
that was well said.
All right.
Guys, if you like what you heard about Wayne Dyer, there is a ton of content online, YouTube. Check out his videos on YouTube. There's some great stuff. But look at his list of books, and most importantly, read into the people that Wayne Dyer, is bringing up. We've covered a handful of them on this very show.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's many people he has covered that we have yet to do. And we'll be back to do those people, because when you can kind of see, everybody explain this from their own vantage point, you start to realize, like, wow, there's something to this, and you see it and you hear it in different ways that really click for you.
Yeah.
And that allows you to look at things from a different perspective about your own life. And from there, you continue to grow. That pendulum, it's no longer are these huge swings, but smaller swings. And then this is you finding yourself. This is you awakening. This is you becoming aware of what you are.
Yeah. So, if you get a chance, take a look at him. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube and everything. So, yeah, it's kind of, I still listen to him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's a
Because now,
reminders.
I just reread one of his books not that long ago, and I picked up. It was like I've never read the book before. In that, there was a certain chapter. I'm like, I don't remember reading this chapter, but I'm a different person
every day.
So, being a different person, I'm gathering new information. So it's endless. All right.
If you like what you hear, guys, click on the link below to subscribe or shoot us an email at perspectiveshift2020@gmail.com. We'd love to hear back, from you guys, and we'll always write back.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Peace
See you next
out.
week.